Good afternoon, everyone. This is Stephanie Coleman with Kansas Lend. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I know it's a new time, so we appreciate you being here. This afternoon, we are with Small Skills, Big Impact, School Readiness with Applied Behavioral Analysis with Molly Noon and Jamie Leeson from Integrated Behavioral Technologies. We're really excited to have this. I know this is a skill a lot of families have asked for and information on. So if you're watching this live, welcome. If you are watching this in a recording, thanks for stopping by and taking a listen. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. You can reach out to Kansas Lend. You can reach out to Molly or Jamie. There's information is below. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Molly now.
Hi, y'all. I appreciate the invitation. My name is Molly Noon. I am a dually licensed. I'm a board certified behavior analyst, and I'm also a speech and language pathologist. So I've been in the field since 2001, and I am what's known as a unicorn in the field, having both licenses. Um, currently, I am the Director of Training and Compliance at Integrated Behavioral Technologies. So I give a lot of trainings. I teach people how to work with kids and make sure that we are doing the latest and greatest in research. And currently, I've decided to go back to school in my 50s, and I'm going back to school at Capella. So that is a little bit of my background, and I've been doing it for a hot minute. I'll let Jamie introduce herself.
Hi guys, my name is Jamie Leeson. I am an autism specialist in the state of Kansas. So I do have my master's in special education with that emphasis in applied behavioral analysis. And then I also have my bachelor's of science in human development and family science with that minor in gerontology as my undergraduate degree. So I'm currently an autism specialist with integrated behavioral technologies. Molly and I get to work together. And some of my previous background is experience in ABA is I've been in the applied behavior analysis field for about 5 years now, started as an RBT, ended up getting my master's degree with that emphasis in ABA. And so I have been a supervisor in the Dodge City, Kansas area for the last 2 years. I have also done some adjunct professor teaching at the University of Central Missouri for their applied behavior analysis program. And then before this, I actually spent about 5 to 10 years in elder care, as you can tell by that minor with my undergrad degree. So if you guys had asked me 5 years ago if I was going to be working with kids, I would have told you no, but I ended up getting into ABA and really liking it. So here I am, and here we are to talk to you today.
Hey. All right, just to tell you a little bit about where we are from, Integrated Behavioral Technologies, we are a not-for-profit corporation, and we do tons of stuff. We provide ABA intervention. So we give intensive behavioral intervention, like one-on-one services with your kid if you have behavioral concerns. Also part of that, we also have parent and caregiver training. So the same stuff that we're working on in the clinic, we'll also work with you and talk to you about how you can do that at home. Sometimes those services are in the home as well. So it could be home, it could be clinic, depending on where you are. That's what what she does is a lot of home services in the Dodge area. And we have services all over Kansas. So it's worth taking a peek. We really emphasize reaching families in rural communities. We know that the services are hard to find there. We work really hard on getting services out to rural communities. Also, part of what we do, we'll give behavioral assessments and diagnostic assessments. So if you are looking for diagnostics, I know that that is a scary process. I know that that is hard to even figure out where to start. You can contact us and we can help you get your feet, get in the right direction and get going there. So we can help with that. We also do offer psychological therapy and family therapy. So if you have any concerns or questions, just visit the website or reach out to Jamie or myself. Next slide. Perfect. All right. So let's talk about why you guys are here. Starting school, when you are looking at starting kindergarten or starting early childhood, I've met more than one family who's like, "Ooh, I'm going to wait another year until my kid is ready. I just don't think they're ready for school." And here's the deal. It is not the job of the child to be ready for kindergarten, but it is the responsibility of the system to be prepared to welcome and respond to each child in an intentional and appropriate way. So I love that. That is a statement that's actually from the Kansas State Department of Education. That is from our schools. Those are the folks who are in charge of our schools. And it is not your job to get your kid. Schools are ready for kids however they show up. And it is school's job to make a program that makes sense for your child. So please don't think that you need to keep your child home a little bit extra to work on those skills. Schools can figure it out. That said, there are some things. Oh, go back a little bit, Jamie. I'm not quite ready. That said, there are some simple and powerful things that you can do to set your kid up for school. Love and affection, healthy meals, physical activity, talking together, reading together, and limiting screen time. All of those things are everyday moments that you can work on that really build the foundation for everything else. All right. So when you are thinking about how do I get ready for that school to start, some things that can help your child feel confident and ready. One of the first things is to start a consistent daily schedule. And frankly, this can be not just for littles, but as kids age as well, especially during the summer, it's really easy to get out of that habit of waking up at a consistent time. All of those things. Establishing that consistent daily schedule that mimics a school routine really helps your kid and makes your mornings a lot easier as well. So practice getting up in the morning. I know a lot of schools have started this week, but sometimes the younger kids will start the next week. So starting your morning get up time, and if you've been getting up at 8 or 9, push it by 15 minutes earlier, and then 15 minutes earlier, and then 15 minutes earlier. So you can get that wake up time to be the time you need for school. Practice getting up in the morning and going through that whole morning routine, eating breakfast, brushing your teeth, getting dressed, getting ready to leave the house on time. All of that, doing that consistently and get on time to leave the house will make your life a lot easier once school starts. Also making those school items familiar. There are a lot of things that our kids use at school, and I know buying school supplies is so exciting. And you get the cute new backpack and it's all shiny, and you get the pencil box and the scissors and all those things. Make sure your kid knows what those are about. How do I use those? How do I open those? And actually, we'll talk about that a little more explicitly later in this session. You may also want to introduce your child to public restrooms, water fountains, some of those things that are shared in a public space that you don't necessarily share in the home. That may be unfamiliar to your child, and making sure they know how to operate those. How do I use those? How do I use the hand dryers that I put my hands in to dry my hands? All of those sorts of things. Finally, following directions. Your child is going to be in a group of children. And can your child follow simple directions? Can they clean up their own mess? If they eat a snack, can they throw away their napkin? Can they put their cup in the sink? Or usually at school, it's like put their milk in the trash. Can they take care of those things? Are they okay with sharing toys? Are they okay with a toy that does not belong to them, but is the classroom toy, that this is something I put back and another child may use it? Can they transition between activities when they are directed to? So if you say 5 more minutes of TV, can they actually turn that screen off when it is time to move to something else? They sound really easy, but those are all hard things to teach. Next slide. Another thing that you can do is to visit the school ahead of time, and when you are there, take pictures. I have seen some folks will make a list. I want to make sure and get pictures of all of these things and sharing that list with their child and making it almost a scavenger hunt. Hey, let's go find this person. Let's go find the principal's office. Let's go find these things and making it a scavenger hunt and fun so it's not so scary. Um, then you can put those things in a book or in a screen album, whatever makes the most sense for how you manage things at home. But that can be something that the child can independently go look at, because it lets your child then go and visit. I'm going to be in this space. This is going to be my teacher, and they can play with it and rehearse it in their head and look at it ahead of time. Things that you want to consider taking pictures of, all the important people, their classroom teacher especially, principal, try to make that principal so they're not scary. I don't want the principal's visit to always be a scary thing. So take a picture of that principal and make sure they are smiley when you do it. Music teacher, PE teacher, but also think about some of the folks you may not immediately think of. Custodians are very important in our littles' lives. Custodians help so much with some of the things that happen in the hallway. Lunch staff, secretaries, receptionists, at the front desk. Secretaries are often the folks who are helping with injuries, like if they fall and skin their knee, the secretary is usually the person putting a Band-Aid on. So getting those sorts of folks and helping those adults feel familiar. Also thinking through all of the different spaces in the building. Classrooms, within the classroom, where is your child going to be sitting? Do they have their own desk? Do they have a shared table? The circle time rug, if they have a quiet space in that classroom, if they have a play space, what does the pretend play space look like? Where does their backpack go? All of those sorts of different spaces so they can picture themselves in that space. And take more pictures in the restroom than you think you need to. Going to the potty is a huge part of little tinies when they first start at school. It is a big deal. And sometimes public restrooms have some things in them that some of our little people have not seen before. So if you are, depending on where the restroom is, if it is a shared public bathroom, sometimes there are urinals in there, and little boys may not have seen those before, and they don't know how to operate them. And I have met more than one little boy coming out with wet hair. So so it is a good thing to review what those are. How to deal with different sorts of soap dispensers. Thinking about how to dry hands. If they've never encountered a hand dryer, they're noisy. They can be really scary if you haven't seen them before. So looking at those. Special classrooms, music room, library, gym, principal's office. Oh, I have library on there twice. But looking at all the different special rooms and maybe even the hallway to get there. How do I walk from my classroom to those spaces? Schools can be very big buildings and can be really intimidating. And so taking that fear out. And finally, make sure to get pictures of the fun stuff. Making sure to get the playground. Look how much fun you're going to have at school. You're going to get to play on this. And, we don't have this sort of stuff at home. So having that ahead of time is really helpful for kids. Jamie, is there anything you want to add to that piece?
I don't think there's anything I was going to add there. The only thing I would say is make sure to take time to walk through with the kids and explain what their school day is going to look like, right? Maybe getting a schedule ahead of time from the teacher would be great. Knowing what immediately are we walking into from the classroom? Are we going straight into breakfast, or do we go straight into circle time, and kind of prepping your child for that?
Mm-hmm.
And walking them through those steps of what the school day is going to look like will help prepare them for that transition when it comes time.
Okay. So there was a study done, Rim Kaufman and company, and you can see that citation down at the bottom. They surveyed kindergarten teachers and said, what are the areas that are the most important to you in terms of behavior that predict how smoothly kids are going to cruise in and how easy that transition to school is? And they identified 4 different areas: following directions, And that means both individual and group instructions. So thinking through, a lot of kids will be able to say, if I say, "Hey, Jamie, can you put this in your cubby?" Jamie's all over it. She gets up, she takes it, she puts it in her cubby. But if the teacher says, "Class, put your papers in your cubby," Jamie may or may not know she's class. And so looking at that piece of following directions, both group and individual. Working independently. Can your child sit and color for a minute? Can they complete tasks like managing personal items without step-by-step support? Can they put their own jacket on? Can they put things into their backpack? Um, Functioning within a group. Can they participate in group routines alongside their friends? Can they stay and listen to a story while sitting next to someone else and be okay and stay with the story? Also communicating their own needs, making sure that they are heard. So some kids have a hard time like speaking up for themselves and saying, "Hey, I fell at recess and my knee hurts," or "I need a drink of water," or whatever their needs are, and making sure that they can advocate for themselves. These four areas, and I really liked this study because when you think about your kids' skills in terms of these four areas, it gives you a really nice lens to think about your child specifically. So, can my kid, instead of trying to do everything at once, you can start going, which area is an area that I think my kid's going to have a harder time with, and start focusing in what is the hardest spot for my kid right now. Okay, next. So there was a survey in 2026 that what they're finding is that students are struggling more and more with several basic skills, things like following instructions, tying their own shoes, sharing, all of those sorts of basics. It's this study, a lot of it was based on since COVID. We became so digitally focused and screen focused during COVID, and that has culturally stayed with us. It is not a bad thing. It is a shift. So if you use a lot of screens in your home, I will be really honest, I do too. I use a ton of screens. This is not a bad thing. But it is a thing. And we need to acknowledge that culturally and look at that. And then what skills are we missing because we have that screen time? So looking at some of those specific skills, and especially, like I said, from the previous slide, thinking about those four areas, when I put those together, it helps me target what do we need to work on to make school a little bit easier for our children. Next slide. So as a parent, you have looked at that and you have identified an area to focus on. You've decided that independently completing routines is what you're working on, or advocating for themselves and communicating their needs. Once you have identified that area, start narrowing down what's a specific skill that you're actually going to teach. It is easier to teach and easier to know if you're succeeding in that teaching if you have a very clear specific target. I can't just decide I'm going to teach my kid how to be independent. What I can teach my child to do is how to wash their hands. So I can teach them how to wash hands without help. I can't just go, well, you're going to be more independent. Go take care of the bathroom on your own. Go wash your hands. You've got to get more specific. I'm going to target that washing hands. Next slide. So when you are thinking about that, and what I would recommend is pick your area, and then I want you to think of one specific skill that would help your child the most. So if it's following directions, can they respond to their name? Can they follow a two-step direction? Grab your shoes and put them by the door. Put your crayons in their box and put your crayon box in the cubby. Things like that. Can they work independently? Can they hang a coat on a hook? Can they put on their shoes? Can they clean up toys and materials? That's a hard one. Can they clean up their toys before they move on to their next task? Functioning in a group, can they sit through a short group activity without getting up? Can they stay with the group when they're walking from one room to another room without wandering off as, oh, that was really cool, I'm going to go over there. Um, Also, can they communicate their needs? Asking to use the restroom, telling an adult when something hurts or feels wrong, telling them they need a drink, telling them they need a green crayon, they don't have a green crayon, things like that. Next slide. So you've identified your skill. You went from category, then you identified a skill. Now you need to break that skill down. So instead of having one big expectation, hey, dude, get ready for school. There's a ton of steps involved in getting ready for school. If I told most 5-year-olds I've met in my life, go get ready for school, they would, I don't know, they grab their backpack and that's it. And they may be still in their jammies. They sure didn't eat breakfast. They may or may not have shoes on. They may or may not be dressed for the weather. So breaking that skill down. In this case, I took a morning routine of a kid that in my world that I know, and it was get dressed, then eat breakfast, brush teeth, get backpack, put on shoes, and head out the door. And even each of those can be broken down even more. I might have that as an overall skill, but then I have get dressed, and what are the steps for getting dressed? It's, put on undies, put on socks, put on pants, put on shirt, put on shoes, putting it in an order that makes sense. You don't want to put on socks and shoes first and then be stuck with the rest of your clothes that you can't get on and have a big old meltdown because my pants won't go over my shoes. So thinking through those breaking down big things into little things. Okay, next slide. So, for example, I had a student that I knew a while back, and I used this handout because this is a very old task analysis that I wrote way back in the day. But I wanted to show you they don't have to be gorgeous. So I did use one that's not quite as clean and pretty because it worked beautifully. This was actually a little bit older than the group that we're talking about. She was a 3rd grade student, and her teacher at the end of the day was saying, "Oh, every single day I have to tell Molly I have to go help her get everything together." And the teacher was just blowing off smoke at the end of the day and just was frustrated. But I'm listening. I'm like, well, Molly knows how to do that. I knew Molly, and I'm like, she totally knows how to do those things. So I sat down with the little girl, and obviously her name was not Molly. And I sat down with her and I said, "Hey, girl, hey, how do you get through that? What are you supposed to do at the end of the day?" And she told me all of these 4 steps. She said, "Well, I get my homework folder, I put my homework in it, and I put my folder in the backpack, and then I grab my backpack, and teacher says, 'Have a good night.'" And I was like, yeah, she does know the steps. So I wrote them down as she was talking, and she could read, and I said, "Do you want pictures?" And she picked out some pictures. We put this in her classroom. Now, normally when I teach a task analysis, I will just teach that first step, and I will go, let's just work on getting your homework folder until you can do that independently. Jamie's going to talk to you a little bit more about what that looks like. Normally I'll do that, but I kind of wanted to see how she would do with the steps. All we did was put this visual in her classroom, and suddenly she ran the whole thing 100% by herself, no additional training. And it was for the rest of the year. And her teacher was like, "I don't know how you got her to do that, but that's gorgeous." And it helped teach her out so much because now teacher in a very chaotic time of day, trying to get all those children, make sure they have their backpack, their coats, all their things, and get them out the door and safely to the right place. You guys go on the bus, and you guys go, your car riders, and you guys are going to Latchkey, making sure all of them go to the right place. Taking that pressure to help get these steps done was taking that pressure off of that teacher was a big deal. So it can make a big difference. All right, next slide. So when you are thinking about how to create that task analysis, you're going to break it down. Small skills, tiny, tiny skills lead to big impacts. When I was working with that young girl in the classroom, it's not a big deal to put your homework in a folder, shove it in a backpack, and go. That is a small skill, but it made a giant difference in that child's independence. That kid felt like a big kid because she was, and it made a giant difference in the teacher. Further, it also impacted how the teacher viewed their kid. So when she saw that growth of skill, teacher was all of a sudden really supportive and really helped us with a lot of other things. So a task analysis, what it is it's a mini schedule. It takes like that morning routine that I showed you a little bit ago of get dressed, brush your teeth, get dressed, eat your breakfast, brush your teeth, so on. And it takes those bigger skills and breaks them down even more. And they help kids know what to expect and what comes next. So when you are developing that, the first thing that you are going to do is first you're going to pick a routine or a skill. You're going to pick something that is important to the kid, but also realistic, something that you know you can teach your kid. And then I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of homework. Now you're going to watch that skill. And it is crazy. When I say, and you know, we're going to workshop hand washing if you guys are game. But when I say what are all the steps in hand washing, it is amazing what people will leave out. And they'll go, oh, wait, I need to do this other thing. So really watch yourself doing that and notice every little thing in order. And then write those down. Make sure each step is clear and observable, that you could tell, yes, they pumped the soap, or yes, they scrubbed the soap, or whatever that is. There are some helpful tools out there if you want to use some computer assistance. There are some nice AI tools. There's one called Goblin, like Goblin, like little critters, little dudes. Goblin Tools is an app that just helps writing task analysis. It doesn't do anything else. It's not looking in a bunch of other AI stuff. Last I checked, it was free through your computer. If you put it on your phone as an app, I think it's like $2 or $3. And then other AI tools, you can use things like Chat or Claude or any of those other AI tools. They will help you write those, but those do open the door to a lot of other things, whereas Goblin Tools is very focused and you're not opening the door to anything else. Add pictures if that's helpful. And when I say if, I mean almost always use pictures. And the reason I say to add pictures, visuals help not just kids understand and remember, they help all of us understand and remember. I want you to think about last time you made macaroni and cheese, the directions on the back of the box are written with visuals. And I don't know about you, but I don't know when the last time I actually read the words on the back of the box, but I almost always look at the back of the box and it tells me exactly what to do. Those visuals, man, we depend on them a lot. So making those visuals for the task, super helpful. There are a couple of different places that I grab my visuals from. Canva, which is what I use to make this presentation. There's a paid service called Lesson Picks that a lot of educators and speech pathologists use. And those have kind of standardized pictures for things like help and walk and things like that. Comic Life is a great environment to put things in. It makes things look like comic books. So if you have any kids who appreciate that sort of stuff, it's a lot of fun. But also most AI tools, if you say, give me a picture of most AI tools, I know Jamie uses the tools within Google pretty regularly. But you can honestly just do a search on on whatever your browser is to find those pictures. Even more fun is having your child be the star. So if you want to slowly walk your kid through those steps and take photos on your phone of your child doing those steps, then they get to be the superhero. And that's me washing my hands and that's me doing that step. And I've had some kids get really excited about that. I've also worked with families where older siblings posed for those pictures and they got to be the big kid showing how to do this. And then the younger sibling was like, I want to be just like big sister, and got to, so that was a lot of fun involving the whole family. Um, After you have created that, then you practice one step at a time. Like I said, you teach just that first step. And if they do that first step by themselves, you celebrate that. Lots of parties. I can't believe how amazing that was. You were the best ever. And then help them through the rest of the steps until they can do that first step pretty consistently. Once the first step's mastered, then you guessed it, you do the first step plus the second step. And what you are doing is you are creating what we call an ABA. It's a behavioral chain. And you are creating this behavioral chain so that the kid knows when I finish this step, now I go to this step. And I don't have to wait for a grown up to tell me what to do. So, that is a quick summary of how to do that. And I think I turn it over to Jamie here in a minute. So she's going to show you some examples.
Not
Oh, your
quite.
turn. Sorry, I forgot about the your
Hand
turn.
washing.
Hand washing. Anybody in here, anybody want to be brave enough to kind of think through the steps of hand washing? What do you do first? Oh, come on. Somebody be brave.
I will.
All right, what you got?
First step, you go to the sink. You walk to the sink.
First step is walk up to the sink. Absolutely. Now, if you're with a little, you're going to want to think about it. Does that child need to be independent? Do they need a step stool or something to reach everything at the sink? So
Right.
it is a problem solving moment. What comes next?
Turn on the water.
Turn on the water. Something to think about if you're trying to write this for multiple places. When you turn on the water, do you turn on the water like this? Do you turn on the water like this? Do you turn on the water at school like this? So thinking through the different ways and motor plan for that. All right, so you walk to the
Think
sink.
about, well, cold and hot, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't want to just turn on the hot water and burn their little hand.
Absolutely. And so you can maybe mark that with like a person going burr cold and another person going ooh hot, and mark those. All right, so you walk to the sink, you turned on the water. Now what?
You depends on what kind of soap you have. You either have a pump soap or well, no, before you put the pump soap, you get your hands wet. You put them under the water.
There we go.
Isn't that funny? Like, because you're like, oh, I know how to wash hands. And
Yeah.
So thinking through what's that order? So yeah. So wet your hands, then what?
Then put soap on them.
Put soap. And again, thinking through the soap. Most schools are going to have soap that you go like this. And that's really weird. Like kids don't, or do you just put your hand under and it shoots out? So finding out ahead of time, what is that? What do they have at school? All right, you got soap on your hands. Now what?
Now you put your hands together
Mm-hmm.
and you, rub them and what I forget. Yeah, what's that called?
Lather.
What did you say?
Lather the soap, maybe.
Lather the soap, but how do you move your hands back and forth so you get the both sides, right?
Yeah.
You wanna scrub them on the tops and bottom.
With some kids, I will do different steps. So I'll say, rub your hands together, then rub tops.
Okay.
Yeah. Now what? You got soapy hands.
Put your hands back under the water and
Put your
rinse
hands
off.
back in. Yeah.
Now this is depending on what you do. I go and the next step is get paper towels to dry my hands. And then I turn off the water using those paper towels. So I guess it just depends
On the person.
And that it's interesting since COVID, because I've taught hand washing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And since COVID, I've heard a lot of that they leave the water running and I get the paper towel first. I will tell you from experience, when I'm teaching a little kid, even though it's not quite as clean, I have them turn off the water, because if you go get the paper towel, then come back to the water, they will forget to come back to the water. They will leave it running.
And that makes sense. That makes sense. I worked at a restaurant, so
Uh-huh.
I've always washed my hands like that. So,
100%. And it
but
is
if
a
I'm
cleaner
at
way to do
home,
it. It
yeah,
also it also gets you out of the bathroom too. So you can
yeah,
use that same paper towel to get out as well.
yes, exactly.
I agree, and it is a better way to go. And with older kids, I will introduce that. Jamie, what is your experience in schools? How do you tackle that
I
piece?
was just thinking that I do agree it's more hygienic. I think about behaviors, right? So how much are we asking this kiddo to do in one step, and how much are they able to complete? And maybe adding that extra transition to turn around and go back to the water might ultimately lead to some behaviors. And then I also think about my own clients where I have a 5-year-old, and if you left the water running, she's gonna come right back up and stick her hands right back in. And then start the process all over again. So I think it really
Absolutely.
is child specific.
Hmm. And
So,
and I mean, my thought too is you can always use the back of your hand to turn the water off, right?
mhm.
Um,
And
so
some schools will have automatic. Some
right.
schools you do this and it turns it off. So it really depends on what's in that space. My point with this, and thank you for participating, I appreciate
Of
that.
course.
It is, you can do what we just did with any skill. You can do this with how to put on your pants. You can do this with how to write your name. You can do this with, bless me, how to blow your nose. That is one of the harder skills to teach. If you were trying to teach how to blow nose, keep in mind one of the steps should be close your mouth, because otherwise if you say blow, what does every 3 or 4 year old do when you say blow is, yeah, and you are, whatever gross is happening is going to be on you. So step one is close your mouth. But when you are teaching those skills, you can break anything down. All right, next slide. I think this is where
Before
you
you
teach.
move to the next slide, I
Oh,
also want you guys to remember that as you're breaking these things down, you're breaking these skills down to be able to teach each little piece individually.
mhm.
And think about it, if your boss looked at you and said, all right, Molly, I need a 250-page report by next month, and here's what it's about, and it has to be done. Molly's going to go, oh my goodness, that's a lot of information, right? But if I, as her boss, come in and say, okay, I have a 250-page report that we have to write by next month. We're going to meet once a week and hit each paragraph and what each page is supposed to be listed about and each skill that we're talking through. Molly's going to feel a lot less overwhelmed. That's what we're trying to do with these kids is I can tell you, go wash your hands all day long. But if we don't learn each one of those individual steps, then we're never going to become independent with it because it's a big task overall when you think about
Mhm.
it.
All right. Very quickly, the research behind this is that when folks have taught those self-help skills, things like putting on a coat, putting on shoes, all of those things, kids who we've studied this, they rose from about 20% of the steps done to 75 to 100% of the steps done, depending on the child. And the only thing they did was teach that or task analysis, excuse me. The only thing they did was teach it by steps instead of teaching it by let's go to school or wash hands. They broke it down. And that's the only intervention that was there. So if I can go from 20 to 75 with only that one intervention, it is, I know it seems very simple. It is remarkable how many things you can teach and clear up and make easier and take the pressure and worry off of our kids just by breaking it down. It's really cool. If you want to look it up, all of these references are at the end, so you can look at those up yourself.
Okay, so now I'm going to jump in and take over and talk to you guys. So we're going to switch a little bit. So now we've talked about building these skills, right? How do we teach these TAs? How do we put these skills together to get our overarching goal? So we look at how do I teach it? How do I, as a parent, go in and teach my child each one of these individual skills? So once we figured out what skill we want to teach, we break it down into those smaller steps. And the next question is, how do we actually go about teaching those things? So the first thing you guys will see here is we model that step. And that just means we demonstrate how it's done. You're going to show your child what that step looks like instead of just saying, hey, go do this, right? So if I'm saying turn on the water, I might also show them with a model, hey, turn on the water. This is what turning on the water looks like. And then we're providing whatever level of support they need to be successful with that step, right? So that might be like pointing to the water, getting them to turn it on. It might just take a point to get them over there to see what you're requesting and asking them to do. That might be showing them a picture, right? We already have talked about those little pictures in our task analysis steps. So it may be as simple as going back to that picture and reminding the child what you're working on. You could also give a verbal reminder, hey, remember, we're washing our hands. It's time to turn on the water. Or you can physically help guide them to get through that step and help begin the movement. The one thing that I like to give a little blip on here is please don't force a child through the movement. If we are not willing to engage in the task, forcing them through that is not going to want them to be engaged any more than they already were beforehand. So I say offer physical guidance, but physical guidance where it's accepted, right? And it's the amount of support that the child is going to need is going to look different for every skill. We may be really good at turning on the water and getting our hands wet, but then when we think about the motor planning that requires us to come over, find the soap, especially if we're talking a pump soap, get it over to us, get a hand underneath it, and push it down to pump it, that's a lot of steps, even in that one singular step of getting soap. So our support for some things may look a little bit different than they do for others, depending on the level of complexity, how much practice the child has at this skill, and just how much they've been exposed to it. And then we practice, right? Practice makes perfect. So new skills usually take a lot of repetition, especially for our littles. We know that we don't just pick up and learn how to tie our shoes after seeing it done once. So the more we can practice these skills, the easier that's going to become for this child. So if your child doesn't get it after the first few tries, that doesn't necessarily mean that the skill is too difficult. It just means that we may need more opportunities and more support from you as the parent to be able to engage in those things a little bit more independently. So my biggest tip there is don't try a skill and immediately give up on it because it's too hard. Make sure that we're providing that support where they need it and giving them a few chances to feel like they can be successful with it. And then as we start getting it, we want to fade our support or fade it as skills grow, right? The more independent we become, the less likely we are to need somebody's help with a task. So ultimately, we don't want them waiting for us to tell them to do every single step, right? We have this term in ABA called reinforcement junkies, right? And if we're doing everything for them, they never learn to do it independently. And so we want this skill to become something that they can do on their own where they don't need a whole lot of adult supervision. And so that looks like remembering when they're being successful, celebrating those wins, but also being able to pull back and let them have that success on their own and building those skills. Okay, we've got the first two steps. We're going to celebrate it and give it a yay-hoo and a high five. And then we're going to work on teaching that third step, right? And I'm going to provide that support as needed, but let them be their little independent self when they finally get that skill mastered. And then the next step that we're going to talk about is celebrating our success. We've hit on that a lot throughout this, but reinforcement doesn't have to mean giving them a prize every time they do something exactly the way you want it done. It can be a praise, a high five. It can be a good job, dude, or you want something open? Great, I'll go with you and open the door now. We can go do that thing. Or just simply making the experience more enjoyable and more fun, right? I know a lot of these skills that we're teaching are monotonous everyday things, and we're thinking, oh gosh, why do I have to stop and teach every single step of how to wash hands? But the more enjoyable we make that experience for the child, the more likely they are going to want to be able to engage and be independent and be involved in those sort of things because it's fun. And mom or dad is giving me a high five, or my teacher is giving me a high five as I'm doing more and more with these skills. And learning new skills, we want it to feel successful, right? Because we want these kids to feel like they can do hard things and we can learn new skills and keep moving. So we have a few examples of how to teach these things. And Molly had the great idea of how to open a Capri Sun, because that is something that a lot of littles come to school with on their first day. And that is something that a lot of littles are not able to do independently, right? That's a lot of motor planning.
Yeah, and especially thinking about what does school lunch, or if you do lunch at school or even snack, when you have a teacher and everybody eating at once and everybody needs help with their with the things in their lunch, if you can send things in their lunch that they know how to open on their own, it makes life a lot easier and they have more time to actually eat.
Right. Less frustration for that child and less frustration for the teacher or the para or whatever adult is in the classroom trying to wrangle 30 children at once, right? So opening Capri Sun seems simple to most of us because we've done it 100 times, right? But when we break it down, there's actually a lot of different skills involved here. So we have to get the Capri Sun pouch. We position it correctly. We orient the straw. We use enough force to puncture the top of that pouch. And then we push the straw in without squeezing the juice out, which is a really
Oh.
skill. So if my child can do steps 1 through 3 independently, but gets stuck when it's time to poke that straw into the hole, I don't need to do the whole thing for them. I can focus my support and my teaching specifically on the steps that they're struggling with, right? So we start by going through these lunch steps. You can get the Capri Sun, you can hold it with your 2 hands, but then we really struggle to get that straw in and juice goes everywhere. That's our intervention point. That's where we start teaching when that child is no longer independently engaged in that task by themselves. And so maybe at first I guide their hand and help them get into position. And then I position the straw to where it's the right direction and we have the pointy end poking down and we're right above the hole that it needs to go into. And then eventually maybe I only point to the circle as we get more independence with that. And I'm slowly fading my support as we work through this skill. And then hopefully I don't have to help at all, right? So the goal ultimately here is independence and success. So that's the idea behind fading the support. We're helping them just enough so they can be successful. And then once they're successful, we're gradually fading ourselves out of the process so they can do that independently. So we have the same thing listed out on the right-hand side here, right? We model. So we model and show them the skill that we're expecting. We support. We provide maybe a verbal prompt of telling them what we want them to do, or we point to the Capri Sun, or maybe they need a little extra help and we're guiding them in the first couple of times. Then we practice. That child gets a chance to be successful with that skill. And once we gain that success, then we fade our support and we celebrate. Please always celebrate those little wins because that's how we help them stick. Zipping a jacket. This is one that I see kids struggle with quite a bit during the school year. So it comes up all the time, especially when kids are starting school and we're going into winter and jackets come out, and jackets are not something we wear year round. So we don't have to get used to it all of the time. It's just they're part of the time. So we might say zip your jacket as though that's one skill, like we've been talking about, right? But look at everything here that we've kind of put into this task analysis. And look at everything that happens even before that zipper goes up, right? All of these little steps that we're having to process through to put on our jacket. And for a lot of kids, pulling that zipper up isn't actually the difficult part of getting our jacket on. So we get those 2 pieces lined up, and then getting that pin completely in that little slot in the zipper box is much harder than it looks for a lot of our kids, right? So if we simply say, zip your jacket over and over, we're kind of missing, sorry, that's one of my staff members. We are kind of missing the part that they actually need help with, right? So if we're saying zip your jacket and somebody's standing out there going, well, I can't get it. Well, I can't get it. We're not even addressing the skill that they're missing to be able to get to the point where they can zip their jacket all the way up, right? So instead, we identify exactly where that breakdown occurs, just like we did with the Capri Sun. Maybe I model how those pieces fit together. Maybe we just need to see that little latch go down into that zipper box for us to understand that that's the piece that we're missing when it comes to putting on our jacket. Then I help guide their hands. As they improve, I kind of back off and I let them complete more of that step themselves, right? So now we're more successful with lining those 2 sides up. So I'm going to back off just a little bit. And now they have inserted that zipper pin into the bottom of that box. And so we've kind of taught those skills by modeling, by pointing our attention to what really matters in this long list of steps that comes with putting on your jacket, right? And this is where patience becomes important. I know that patience is a virtue, and depending on my day, sometimes I don't always have as much as I need to. But sometimes independence is going to look a little bit slower and a little bit messier when a child is learning. So if you immediately step in and we zip it up because we're trying to get out the door, and I understand that happens, life is busy, but now we're missing the moment for that teaching step, right? We missed the opportunity for us to be able to teach that skill to our child rather than us doing it for them right away. So just taking the moment to slow down and looking for those opportunities to practice. I promise those opportunities to practice these skills come across a lot in natural life. I think sometimes we just get so busy, or these are the things that we've always done for our kids, so we don't think about taking the time to break those skills down and teach them for a higher level of independence when it comes to these things. Our next one is sitting near peers. This is one especially for our littles that sometimes we're not used to when we first come into school. So I wanted to include an example that isn't a self-help skill. We're not just working on things for ourselves, because a task analysis can be used for much more than things just like getting dressed and opening our food and putting on our socks, the day-to-day life things that only occur with me. So go sit with your group sounds like one direction. Once again, go sit with the group, go sit in circle time. But actually there's quite a few behaviors involved, and a child has to approach the group, right? Figure out where they're going to sit, how they position their body, how to sit appropriately, where we stay in that space, are we going to participate? There's a lot of different steps that come in with group time. So for some children, especially children who struggle in a social or a group setting, that can be a lot of different asks at once for a child. So instead of expecting them to complete the entire skill immediately, we teach the little pieces like we've been talking about. Maybe initially we teach that the goal is simply walking over and sitting near our peers for a short period of time. That could be as short as 10 seconds if that's all that child will tolerate. That could be as long as 5 minutes if our child is more than willing to sit down and hang out for 5 minutes and tolerate that. That's really child specific and what their current skill level is. And then once we get comfortable with that and successful, we build from there, right? So maybe we were only able to sit for 10 seconds at a time. Now, after we've done that for a couple days, maybe we start sitting for 15 seconds or 30 seconds at a time, and we slowly build that skill up so it's not so overwhelming. And then the same process still applies. We model, we support, we practice, we fade that support, and we reinforce our success, right? So not everything is going to look just like it should for this kid over here. Comparison is a hard game, so I would say please don't do that to yourselves. Focus on what your child is able to do, right? If they're only able to sit for 10 seconds, we start at 10 seconds and we work our way up. And it's okay that he's not sitting exactly like Timmy is over here, right? We'll get there, and we get there through these small steps and this teaching process. And then importantly, the goal isn't necessarily to make the child socialize exactly like everyone else. That's not my goal here. We're teaching the functional skill that they need to be comfortable and successful within their environment, right? They're going into the school setting. I'm not asking you to be best friends with everybody in that room and to engage and have an interaction every time we go sit in group. But we do need to learn how to sit in group if that's an important part of our day, and that's going to be an environment in which we're in quite often, right? That's a skill that we have to target if that's something we're going to be doing all day long. Okay, so now we're moving from the skill building to the relationship building piece, and this is probably going to be a little bit of Molly and I both kind of tag teaming this here, but so far we spent a lot of time talking about what we can teach and what we can practice with our kids, but once your child enters the school, another really important skill comes into play, and this one's actually for the adults, right? So knowing how to navigate the school system and build relationships with people in that school system and the people supporting your child is a huge skill to have, because that's how we get resources and services and work together as a team to do what's best for the kid in front of us. So schools have teachers, administrators, counselors, psychologists, special education staff, yada, yada, yada. We could go down a very long list. But if you've never navigated that system before, it can be very difficult to know who you're supposed to contact or who who deals with this issue, or who do I go to for this? So that's kind of our hope here for this next section is we want to make it a little less intimidating and talk to you guys about where you can even start, whether you have a question or concern about your child, and kind of who is going to be the best person for you guys to navigate through that support with. So we have a little flow chart here that Molly and I worked on. And one of the biggest things to remember here is that you don't have to know every job title in the school system before you guys ask for help. That, like I said, that is a long list of professionals, probably some jobs you weren't even aware existed. So don't feel like you have to memorize the whole school roster to be able to reach out for support. So I want you guys to start by thinking at the top, what is your question or concern about, right? Really get down to what am I targeting here? What do I want to bring to the school about my concern? If it's something happening primarily in the classroom, your child's teacher is usually a great starting point. If you're wondering about additional supports, accommodations, speech, OT, or an IEP, a 504, those sorts of things, you may want to start with working with people like the school psychologist or the counselor, special education staff, or any related services like speech and OT to kind of work with those concerns, because your child's teacher has a hand in that, but they're not the main person providing the evaluations and the services and going through that whole process. And then when we're talking things like logistic, transportation, attendance, schedules, pickup, drop off, usually the school office staff can get you to the right person. If it's not them, then it's going to be the principal or the safety director, those sorts of things that can help you with that, and they will point you in the right direction. My next one is significant behavior or safety concerns. We may need to involve the school counselor, the administrator, in addition to our teacher, especially if the behaviors are happening in the classroom. For some school systems, I know that the school counselor and the school psychologist run the same roles. Like out here in Dodge City, we don't necessarily have school counselors, we have school psychologists, and they kind of run that whole role. So knowing that those terms can be interchangeable and looking for somebody to work with there, somebody that's in administration and can kind of help guide you to who the right person is.
There are also some school districts that have the role of behavior coach, and then a very few have BCBAs. So
Right.
I would add those in that particular path.
Right. Sometimes it's a behavior support specialist. Sometimes it's a behavior interventionist. Sometimes it's a board certified behavior analyst. They may also be a good person to contact there if your school district has that available to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have questions specifically about special education evaluations, eligibility, services, or procedural rights, that means you're connecting with the school's special education team or director. Sometimes that may be an outside district. Like I know here in Dodge City, we have a special education co-op that is a different district outside of the actual district that our children are in and being seen in the buildings in. So I'm sure that your principal, your school psychologist, your teacher, if you have questions about those evaluations, getting your child connected with eligibility for an IEP or a 504, if there is an outside special education team, they can help direct you that way as well.
Jamie, pause really. I would also recommend, because you're not going to need this maybe on day one, but you might need it in January. So I would, especially since Stephanie is recording this, take a screenshot of this slide so that you remember who do I go back and contact, because you may not need it today, but when you do need it, what title do I even look for? And that'll help you out.
Right. And on top of that, I wanted to give you guys just a reminder that every school district is going to be structured a little bit differently. So these aren't rigid rules. It's not like you can point back to the Kansas Department of Education with this graphic and they're going to say, you need to go here, right? This is kind of just to give you guys a starting map. And if you contact the wrong person, that's okay. Just simply ask, okay, who would be the best person for me to talk to this about, right? And usually those school districts are more than willing to help you find who is going to be the best avenue for you to get your questions answered. Anything to add, Molly? Okay. Tips for success here. We're going to do this twice, but no matter who you're contacting, there are going to be a few things that can make these conversations much more productive as we know, communication's not always the most fun thing to do, especially when it's not about a fun topic or we have a question or a concern. So first, I really want you guys to focus on being clear and specific about your question or concern. Talk about what you're seeing instead of saying, well, school isn't going well, right? We're talking about giving these people a concern to address, and school isn't going well doesn't tell them what about school isn't going well, right? So instead of saying school isn't going well, we might say, for the last 2 weeks, my child has been crying before school and telling me they don't want to go because lunch is too loud, right? So we're very specific there. That gives the school team, something concrete to work with, right? Because they're dealing with oogles and gobs of students throughout the day. And so if they are going to address a concern, it needs to be specific instead of trying to get down to the nitty-gritty of what we're actually having a question about, right? And then include the information that helps them understand the situation. I always tell parents, take data. I'm a big data person, but take the dates, where it's happening, who's involved, what your child has told you, what's been tried already, what communication maybe you've had with the school team about this issue. And that not only gives you a log to look back and say, okay, here's my issues, here's how I can address these, but it also gives the school team a really good idea of how long this has been occurring, who's involved in the situation, who do we address with to make the necessary steps to fix this or to support the child better and get some training there on whatever may need to be taken. So having a backlog for those instances is really, really great because you're no longer remembering instances. You're able to point to it and say, this happened on this date and time, and here's why I'm addressing this concern. And then keep records of important communication. You don't need to document every tiny interaction. If you go in and tell your son's teacher hi, and she said, hi, I had a great weekend. We went on vacation. We don't need to know that. But save important emails, save paperwork from the school, make notes after significant meetings or conversations. That way, once again, we have that backlog so you can refer to that as well about exactly what was said. And then most importantly, that remember this is a relationship. We have a relationship with these individuals at the schools. Parents have a lot of information about their children that the school doesn't always have. And school staff see things during the day that parents may have never seen at home, right? So we're working with a child in 2 different environments with a lot of different adults involved. So when we bring those perspectives together, we get a much better picture of what the child actually needs. And so it's not about arguing with them. It's not about keeping a score of, well, they don't do this at home, but they're doing it here. It's okay, what are we seeing and how can we address this in each specific environment to make sure that the child is best supported and successful, and so that the rest of the school team can be successful as well.
And if you're nervous about those conversations, you can bring an advocate with you to any meeting. You are always welcome to bring someone with you. You don't have to ask the school's permission. You can bring someone with you. Families Together is an agency that can help you find an advocate if you don't have someone you know. Yeah.
And then I have 2 more slides and I promise I'll get you guys out of here. My last thing is how to request an evaluation. So a lot of my parents go, but what happens when your concern goes beyond a regular classroom and you think your child may need to be evaluated for something and maybe for special education services? You can absolutely request an evaluation from the school system. And a really good place to start is by clearly identifying your concerns, like we talked about earlier. What are you noticing? What is your child struggling with academically? Is it communication? Is it behavior? Is it social skills? Are we talking daily functioning, like going to the bathroom? What's happening at school that's making you concerned? And then we put that request into writing. You don't have to complicate or use legal language. We are not asking you guys to be behavior professionals, special education professionals, but you can simply explain that you're concerned about what's happening with your child, right? And that your child's educational performance or functioning is impaired, and therefore you want to request an evaluation for those reasons. So requesting an evaluation is going to determine whether or not the child may be eligible for special education services and those supports there. And then from there, there's a formal process that the school follows. An evaluation also isn't just one test. So depending on the concerns, the team may use records, observations, interviews, standardized assessments, and information from teachers, parents, family to be able to take part in that larger assessment for additional services. And then the team comes back together, we review that information, and from there, determine eligibility and what your child may or may not need.
The bottom line with this is that if you request an evaluation, the school is legally required to address that. They may not necessarily give an evaluation. They may tell you this is why we don't think one is needed, but they are required to address it and collect some data. So if you request something, they are required to respond to you, and that is your right to do that. And again, families together can help with some of those things.
Right. And I think another important distinction there is that requesting an evaluation does not automatically mean that your child is going to qualify for special education services, but it absolutely helps you bring your concerns forward and move forward with a school evaluation to know what next steps would look like. And then my last tip for success is I want you guys to come back to the communication tips because they become especially important when we're talking about evaluations in special education. So remember, be specific, put important requests in writing always, keep your records so you have past documentation of those things, and then ask questions when something doesn't make sense. That is your right as a parent to ask questions about what's happening with your child. And then the last thing I'll give you guys is that you are a member of your child's educational team. So you absolutely have the opportunities to participate in the progress, provide information about your child, ask questions, and understand the decisions that are being made by the school during that process. And then I have some references.
Jamie, one more slide. If you need to contact us, please feel free to reach out. I know we went a little bit over and I apologize for that, but thank you so much for your time.
Right too, so it's okay.
Yeah, I know that you guys, I know that as parents, y'all are doing an amazing hard work every day. And we really appreciate that you trust us enough to come to us to ask some questions, to find out more information. And you are also absolutely welcome to contact us for further information. It doesn't mean you're obligated to do anything more than just, I've got a question, where do I go for this thing? Just holler at us.
Yeah, this has been great. I think one of my favorite tools was at the beginning when you were taking pictures and putting them in a book of all the different things around the school. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have been amazing to have 30, well, not 30 years ago, but like 25 years ago, that idea for my son. That was really cool.
I worked in a district where we had all of the first year middle schoolers, they were sixth graders, and we had all the sixth graders take pictures of what they thought was important to give to the incoming next year's class. And they had a ball. And it was not stuff that as grown-ups we thought of. So getting the kids involved is way fun.
Well, thank you so much for today. Molly, Jamie, this has been fantastic. We will have it out on YouTube probably the first part of next week, and we'll get it shared out again as well. It's got a lot of great information in it. So thank you both very much. I appreciate you all joining us, and thanks to everyone who attended and is watching in the future. So
thanks for having us.
Yeah.